Other interesting cultural news, you have Disney stock being bought by yet another activist investor. Now, this comes as Disney stock is gone down precipitously about the past couple years. A lot of people are saying it's partially because of Bob Chapek and Bob Iger, the CEOs, and partially because their creativity in terms of the writing department is poor to say the least. A lot of the Disney intellectual properties have become a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy, which, if you own a photocopier at home, it's a fun little experiment. Take a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy. Every time you do that, the image degrades, which I think is a perfect metaphor for things like Star Wars and the Marvels, which used to be very unique things and magical things back in the day, as youth might say. Good rule of thumb for Star Wars, well, as well as Indiana Jones, it's hard to keep track of how many things Disney has bastardized and destroyed, but they used to be more rare. They used to be quality over quantity. They reversed that, and I think the stock market is rewarding them appropriately. The audiences are all leaving appropriately. Now, on that note, really quick, I'm not a doctor. However, if you click the subscribe button, it may cure my stuttering. Maybe. Probably. Just saying it can't hurt. We could find out together. Now, this comes as a couple weeks ago, we actually noted that a activist investor was actually buying up to about $2 billion of Disney stock and pushing for 2 seats on the board of directors. That activist investor wanted Disney specifically to get out of politics, as Disney has not only injected politics into these materials, but also gone up against the governor of Florida with the whole controversy around their bill where they didn't want the schools indoctrinating in their children in sexual beliefs and ideals. So they told the schools, hey, you can't talk about sex one way or the other. We don't care what kind no kind. This isn't the place for that. And Disney said, hey, we want schools to have we want teachers to be able to indoctrinate kids. Disney said, hey, we stand up for that. They made that decision and alienated a huge part of the audience, thereby creating their own competition via Bent Key Ventures, or Bent Key, which is the Daily Wire's now animated shows for the children, which I suspect that will be wildly successful as more and more consumers are looking for an alternative where they just want to have a show they could trust where they're not pushing messages to kids that are contrary to many of their values and their core beliefs. Now, this new company, this other activist investor, is known as Value Act Capital. And it looks like they've been increasing their stake in Disney for quite some time. They are a San Francisco-based, so you probably already know what kind of activists they are and how this might be contrarian to the other investor. Now, they claim that they've known the Disney team for more than a decade and have been in contact with management as it built over its stake over the last months. Although the exact size of the stake is unclear, it will not be learned about specific changes Value Act might be pushing for. The people said that Value Act believes the home of Mickey Mouse can flex its muscles now. News of Value Act's position was first reported by 13D Monitor. Value Act and Disney declined to comment. Disney stock price could trade between $120 and $190 per share, far above its $94.19 per share Value Act has suggested. Which, no. Again, I'm not giving financial advice. I'm just saying, I think the only way they can actually get to that huge dollar per share is if they got rid of politics completely and went after the mass audience of everyone in the United States. Because right now, they've alienated about 50% of the audience, give or take. And I'm not saying you can't do that. There are a lot of niche products out there. Ferrari makes, well, I was going to say probably not the best example since they're known for actually lying about how many vehicles they make. But nevertheless, companies like Ferrari, they don't make a big volume of products. They're not like the Toyota Corolla, which is the #1 car in history by volume of units sold. Now, Ferrari makes a very limited amount for a very specific customer set. Now, that works for them because it's a higher price. Now, Disney, they can't really charge a high price for these movies and these stuffs. So they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Granted, they put themselves there to begin with. Now, Disney's CEO Bob Iger is also, they claim to be positioned in terms of streaming subscribers and content library, but they say that, oh yeah, there's all this great content by Pixar, Star Wars, and Marvel. But do they? In terms of how many of the new intellectual properties that have been released are really beloved and people really want to hear about? Because they can't help but think more and more people will be turned off by the content, and fewer people want to see the rudimentary acting and the piss poor storylines or lack thereof. Sometimes it doesn't even seem like there's a story, and can't help but think they're just devaluing what Disney Plus could have been, their streaming service, where again they had a huge portfolio. They had the formula for success. They had all the ammo for the fight, so to say, and they chose to shoot themselves in the foot time and time again. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, last month it looks like Value Act's first drama company. So Nelson Push Train Fund Management seems to be the one I was referencing to earlier. Peltz said in a regulatory filing on Tuesday that Tran increased his stake in common shares by more than 400%, now owns 32.9 million shares, roughly worth $2.7 billion at the end of the third quarter. The stake is far bigger than those held by hedge funds, Coatue Management, Adage Capital Partners, and D.E. Shaw, which each stakes more than $100 million. Last month, Peltz signaled that he was planning to nominate several directors to the board when the nomination window opens in a few weeks. He may be laying the groundwork for a second proxy fight after abandoning his push for one board seat in February after the company laid out plans to address the criticism. Which, again, at the time, he was saying, hey, you need to get your costs under control because you're bleeding money. Which they were. And Bob Iger, to his credit, he did cut a lot of costs. The goal is to cut about $7 billion in expenses, which they have. They've been laying off, getting rid of employees, trimming the fat, so to say, and they've been helping in that regard, but they're still alienating people with the controversial things that they're making and their political messaging that they're ingesting and pushing into all the content. The consumers are not so much happy. Now, granted, there are people who are politically motivated who will like them for that, but I think that group of people is few and far between compared to the mass audience of everyone. So let me know in the comments, do you think this new company will be able to have a little bit more weight behind them? It seems to be there's going to be a proxy war. Who's going to win? You have Peltz. Again, Peltz is someone who's very anti-policy. He wants to get politics out of the business. He did this with multiple companies before. He successfully turned around businesses such as Snapple, which he successfully turned that company around, then sold it to Dr. Pepper, now Keurig Dr. Pepper, for a huge sum of capital. So it'll be interesting to see. What do you think is the best vision? One, get politics out of Disney. Let them make up content for everyone. Or two, ramp up the politics, ramp up the political messaging, and lean into it, so to say. I'd be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Thank you everyone again for taking the time to tune in today, trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of November. So if you can click that button, I'd greatly appreciate it. Also, any comments are greatly appreciated. I'm always looking for a critique, even if it's harsh, so I know how to grow and develop, make the channel better and better. Lastly, don't forget to take time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe, fight the good fight.